In September of 2014, Dixie Regional Medical Center began functioning like a Level 2 trauma center. Less than 2 months later, an ATV accident on a remote dirt road near Pine Valley, Utah, put this new status to the test. Clinging to life was 16-year-old Britton Shipp.
They did call 911. 911 put out a call to us. As we came up and we saw where the patient was lying in the mud, we were really worried. Both of them were hurt, but Britton was hurt badly. I hopped on the radio to dispatch and said, I've got to have a helicopter here, or I don't think this little chap will make it. There's a thing called the golden hour, but we didn't have a golden hour here. We knew that we had to get him as quick as we could to the hospital. He never would have been able to make the flight to Las Vegas, where the Trauma 2 Center was. But we had just 2 months before had the Trauma Center at St. George. They could take care of him.
I was always just a little bit disappointed that he was a brother and not a sister, so I would dress him up all the time in the girliest things, girliest clothes. I'd put bows on his hair. I think my parents kind of started to worry a little bit as he got older, so, you know, I had to back off a little bit from the trying to make him a sister.
You know what? I just took it. If it made her happy, and that's all that mattered.
Nah, not the biggest kid on the team, but one of the most competitive, fierce fighters that you've ever been around. He was always our go-to pitcher. He's always our shortstop and always our quarterback. Just leadership positions is what he played and what he's excelled at.
I don't know, he's been my big little brother, and he's had a super strong idea of who he was and where he's going in life, and I've always admired that about him.
Like I told Autumn one day, it was like a couple days before it happened that, you know, we were sitting at the kitchen table together, and I found myself just staring at this boy that had kind of turned into a man all of a sudden, and I was just thinking, dang, that boy is handsome.
Britton had gone on a Sadie Hawkins date that morning, left about 7 o'clock, and 4 or 5 couples and going riding around this area.
They weren't going very fast. They were doing about 20 miles an hour.
The road turned from dirt over a cattle guard to a kind of a cinder material, and anytime you've ever been on a dirt road by a cattle guard, people are always slowing down and speeding up right after a cattle guard, and it makes ruts in dirt roads, what's called washboard.
I think what they must have done was just hit one of those washboards.
And it just started rattling on the washboard.
She lost control.
It went right, left, right, and caught a rear tire and just went airborne and kind of flipped.
Both of them were thrown out, and the ATV actually rolled 360 and landed back on its wheels.
The roll cage came over and crushed his skull as he was just laying there, right on the middle of the road. She was injured as well. She had some problems with her leg, and I'm sure she was probably a little delirious from what just happened because it happened so quick.
I don't even know if she knew she was hurt because she was so worried about him.
And, you know, saved his life. I mean, no two ways about it, saved his life.
There is no good weather reporting in Pine Valley, and so I basically gathered the crew up and said, we have a flight request in Pine Valley. The weather's totally legal here in St. George. I know 100% confident we can leave St. George and get back to St. George, but I don't have full confidence we can get all the way into Pine Valley, so we made the decision as a crew to try.
So I figured we had about 10 minutes that we had to really work with this chap to keep him alive.
And I can't emphasize how phenomenal they did prior to our arrival. They had a great landing zone set up. They had patient care initiated. They did a tremendous job that day. We exited the helicopter, and we could tell that things were critical.
My primary job is to assess the patient and begin the necessary interventions that we need to perform to keep the person alive and buy him some time, which was what we were fighting for, is some time to get him where he needed to be. He needed neurosurgery, and he certainly wasn't going to make it to Las Vegas. I thought he was lucky just to get back to St. George.
I remember seeing, blue sky when we departed and rainbows and stuff. So, I mean, it was good weather. The sun was out.
As soon as they lifted up, there was a tailwind came up, and it took only 9 minutes from Grass Valley to the hospital.
The second I drove in the parking lot at the hospital, I seen the helicopter circling to land, and
I remember just dropping to my knees. Please, 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 just let me get there if I can only see him one more time, if I can only tell him I love him one more time.
Steve gave a pass down to Dr. Fox, and they went to work immediately.
They reported that he was either a Glasgow Coma Score 3 or 4, which is the lowest on the scale. The scale goes from 3 to 15. Low likelihood of survival, low likelihood of recovering independent normal functioning. With a CAT scan that showed a severe fracture on that right side and pressing on the brain, severe swelling throughout the brain, he had minutes to live, if he was going to live at all.
I needed to sign a paper, and all I remember doing is just grabbing the paper from him. I didn't even look at the paper, and I just scribbled it and just let it out of my hand.
I'm a father. I understand what he was going through. And at that point, I needed to tell him we needed to go. So I had to be forceful.
Dr. Fox, being the professional that he is, was keeping his cool and just telling us how it was.
I don't know who slept more that first night, him or me. I don't think either of us slept. I'm trying to keep his son alive, and he's just worried about his son.
We got through the first night, and that's all I needed was the next day, and it kind of just kept getting better from there.
CAT scans we obtained continued to show improvements. Then more hope started to grow.
He is proof that in our little community of St. George, this can be done on a big-time level. This kind of stuff you hear about at the Mayo Clinic, or you hear about at Cedars-Sinai hospitals, these places like that.
He's doing speech and occupational therapy and physical therapy twice a week per therapy, so we're there at least 6 times a week.
Going from a 3 to what he is now, and being able to do every single thing in St. George, right where we live.
But this has been a dramatic recovery. I think that anyone involved would say that he's much further along than we had anticipated, and in some ways you could say it's a miracle.
We've kept in touch. He's doing remarkably well, and the majority of those great strides occurred when he was in the rehab unit. I actually see him today in clinic.
And I have all the respect in the world for Britton and his work ethic, and he really deserves so much credit for the outcome that's in process right now, and for how far he's really come.
Well, I could tell everybody every single day, Britton gets better every single day.
And I think that this is an extraordinary story of how a family, a hospital, and a community came together to make something extraordinary happen.
Within a 40-day period of when this happened to Britton, the administration in our community and Dixie Regional staff, that this had all been put in place. Just a lot of great people doing miraculous things that day, and to get him to that hospital as fast as they did with no time left on the clock. And like Dr. Fox says, he had minutes to live.
We go through all that training for all those years for moments like that where, it's so ingrained into you that it's just, a natural process.
Because they established that program and fought hard and got him, and whatever it took to get him here, our son's alive.